Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, and today we're going to be creating what just might be the most beautiful building we've ever built. It's a gorgeous walk-through 19th century butterfly house made out of glass. I cannot wait to show it to you. Let's go. I found out something absolutely mind-blowing when I was researching this episode. I assumed, seeing as we were building incredible glass houses from about 1850 onwards, that we would have had butterfly houses from about that time. But apparently the first ever dedicated butterfly house was built in England in 1970, which is absolutely crazy. I can't believe it took us that long to think of putting butterflies in here. So this build is going to be something that was added to the zoo in around 1890, and it originally would have just been a tropical house, a bit like the palm house, but probably for slightly smaller plants. And then at some point recently, the zoo has converted it into the butterfly house that we're going to build today. We've got the walkthrough exhibit in, and we're just building the outside now. It's going to start off looking pretty similar to the palm house we already have, but it's going to look very different by the end of it. It's going to be much more ornate, much smaller, and there's going to be a lot more work going into the limestone surround. It won't just all be glass like the palm house. And the entrance to this is really grand, and it's probably one of my favourite things that I've built. We'll get onto that in a second. Firstly, we're just going to start putting the sides in. We're going to use a lot of pieces that I have quite literally never used before in all my years playing Planet Zoo doing this. It was a lot of fun to build. I've never really done this sort of white limestone 19th century kind of build before, I don't think. We've done a whole building out of glass, of course, and a few classic brick builds in other zoos, but nothing like this. It's really interesting exploring all the pieces in the classic set that we have and getting them to work. So there's probably about 5 or 6 pieces in this little section here that we're creating, and this will just go all the way around the bottom of the glass. This tiny little concrete fountain base, which is one of the smallest pieces in the classic set, is really useful for creating a border along the bottom. We'll just rotate this by hand so we can get it to go around this curved piece of glass here. We'll do the same with some of the larger pieces as well, just so we can get a seamless border at the bottom of the glass that goes all the way around the building. We'll do this around the whole butterfly house, although I will skip most of that, and we will get on to something more interesting. We're going to recolor it to a cream, which I think is a lot more attractive than the standard white, and differentiates it from the green palm house that we have already. And then we get on to the first of the brand new pieces, this enormous glass arbor, which I have tried to use on many occasions, but never found a use for it that I was happy with until now. This is going to sit on top of the entrance of the butterfly house, just add a really impressive dimension to it. And you're going to see something pretty rare in this episode, which is me building something with basically no idea where I'm going when I start, because I originally envisaged this as a little greenhouse that would have been in the zoo since probably about 1850 or something like that the zoo would have converted into a butterfly house at some point. And I was away last weekend, so I designed it all away from my PC, just drawing it out. And then when I came to actually build it and put the walkthrough exhibit in for the butterflies, I realised I had remembered it being about half the size that it was. It's so enormous, there was absolutely no way I was going to get a simple little brick and glass greenhouse to work at the size that the walkthrough exhibit demanded. So I ended up coming up with a completely new design as I was building. So you're going to see a lot of changes in the course of this video, but like I say, the end result is one of my favourite builds ever, I think. To set the build in context, we're building here in between the main wolf habitat that we built last week and the huge Indian elephant habitat that was built back in, I think it was episode 3 of the series. So this is going to bridge the gap between the South American area and the little Asian area that we've got here. And because it's something that's been here in one form or another since the 1890s, it's going to have its own little area. We're going to surround it with gravel and some beautiful limestone walls. And once the guests get past here, they will get to the sign for the elephants that will introduce them to the Asian elephant habitat. The exit to this building, which we'll build later, will take people right out to that area, so they're straight into the elephants from there. These limestone trim pieces are really nice as well, never used these before. But let's get on to making the big dome that's going to sit on top of the entrance, which is what's going to tie those big arbor glass pieces into the front of the building that we've just built. We'll get our African mud pillar and put it in the right position so it's just touching the edge of these arbor glass pieces here. And then we'll take the gorgeous limestone leaves piece, this one here, and we're going to build pretty much the entire dome just out of this one piece and use it in various different ways. So we're going to get it in this way round and make it cover up the metal there. The arbor glass pieces aren't flexi-color, so if I could make them cream so they matched, I might be tempted to leave them, but because they're only available in a sort of really dark grey, they don't work, so we need to cover those up. And then we're going to spin it round to make a T-shape. Position this part of the T underneath the first piece that we placed down, Just move it back a little bit so there's no Z fighting there. And then we're going to use the other side of the piece, which is plain, and firstly place this at the bottom so that we've got a base to the dome, and then place it next to the pieces that we've already placed so that we have a pattern of leaves and then just plain limestone. And then once we've got everything in the right position, we can select it all like so. Go in, deselect the mud pillar, duplicate it, spin it round and put it on the other side, and then delete the extra mud pillar, select all of it, deselect the mud pillar, it's so simple, and then we can start rotating it. This is going to perfectly cover up that dome there, apart from the very top bits, which we will sort out in a second. All we need to do is rotate it to get like a half circle, so this sits on top of the entrance that we built and joins it back up to the glass behind it. So a couple more pieces, there we go, that's the last one, and that is the beginnings of that dome there. We'll take it and just copy it down a couple of times, because we're going to use little bits of the second and third copy just to tidy up those walls, and then we'll start deleting so we can see that entrance that we built. And then we're going to use another piece that we've never used before, this classic door top, to just create a long piece of limestone that goes across the top. Just makes it look more seamless and brings it all together. And once we've done that, we'll copy it on top of itself to get rid of those glass holes that are in the middle of it. We'll put some statues in here because we always have to have statues sunk into our buildings on this channel. We've got some lovely little elephants and gorillas, etc. in the classic set that go really nicely there. And then we can get onto the gravel that I mentioned. So we're going to use this as the actual path that runs up to the entrance, but we'll use a grid which is based on that one floor piece we put down right at the beginning to get everything nice and tidy. And then we can go off grid to get some nice curves that go around the side of the building and also give it a curved rather than a straight front, which is just going to look a lot more attractive. Once we've done that, we're going to take one more piece and use that to cover up the last remaining bits of metal. So firstly, we'll do the African mud pillar trick again, just so that we can cover up this top bit here. We'll create a few, select them all, and then we can start spinning them. It'll be much quicker than doing it one at a time. So just a couple more of those to copy in, and we are pretty much done there. And then we're going to have to do the next bit freehand, but we're just going to take that same piece and go over the metal arms that keep the glass in place and just go over and over, adjusting it a tiny little bit each time until we get to the top. And that will cover up the first of the arms and look really nice, blends it in really well with the rest of the building. And once we've created one of those, we can just copy the whole thing and spin it around a couple of times to cover up the remaining two arms. That's the one on the left covered up. And then spin it around one more time and move it across, and we can cover up the one on the right. And we've got a beautiful glass dome that covers the top of the building. It looks really nice. We'll add a couple of the butterfly decals to the doors to give it a slightly more modern flavour. Those doors will obviously be a new addition as well. And then we're going to use one of the Twilight Pack pieces and some string just to add some detailing to the glass house. These will be copied all the way around the building, but I'll just show you this first panel here so you can see what we're doing. The piece from the Twilight Pack makes it look more solid, and this piece makes it look more attractive. And then we can move on to the inside of the building and the butterfly walkthrough itself. The inside of the building, like the outside, is pretty much going to be an original design. It is influenced by the butterfly house at Chester Zoo. That's probably my favourite butterfly house that I've been to. And what I like about that one is that you are just completely surrounded by foliage as soon as you get in there. There's a little path that you're walking on, and then from the edge of the path, it's just plants, bushes and trees. You basically can't see the edge of the building unless you look up. We want to replicate that here. So I'm keeping pretty much all of the default items from the walkthrough exhibit in here. I just removed the nectar feeder, which goes right by the entrance, because it just doesn't make sense to me to have people stopping to see butterflies the second they walk through the front door. That's just going to cause a bottleneck. But aside from that, all the others are in here, and we're going to start filling this building with plants. So we don't need to be too specific about where the plants are coming from. These butterflies, they're mainly grassland butterflies really, and they come from all over the world. We're going to go for a much more tropical vibe in here, so we don't need to be fussed about what country it comes from or anything like that. And we're going to concentrate mainly on blocking the view out of the house to make it more immersive, and getting loads of plants in and around the default items to make them a bit more unique. It's starting to look good. I'll do the rest of the planting off camera, because we're going to move on to the final part of today's build, which is something that I've wanted to build for quite a while actually, which is one of the pupae displays that you get in butterfly houses. We're going to make our own little place where the butterflies hatch out of their pupae. which is going to be quite a challenge, but I think we can do it. This little display is based on a reference photo I saw of a zoo somewhere. I forget what zoo it was. It might have been in Australia. It was a while ago that I saw the picture, but I like the general design. This isn't going to be in a sort of 19th century style, because obviously this would be a much more modern edition. So we'll just get something fairly natural looking that's covered in lots of fake rocks and plants and things like that. And then we'll start making some pupae. We've got some glass at the front so the guests can see the butterflies as they hatch out, and then we're going to use that same glass piece at the back to make dividers in the wall at the back, so it looks like the staff will be able to open those and get in there when they need to get butterflies in and out of there. And then we'll use these plant panels to create the bottom of this little mini habitat. I don't know if you'd call it a habitat, but where the butterflies are going to hatch. So we'll get a couple of those in to make the floor of it, make sure they're not clipping through the glass, and then we'll start making it look a bit more attractive. These leaf panels, they're kind of realistic, and I wanted to use them, but I decided they were way too cheap looking for this zoo, so we're going to replace those with billboards with something much nicer on them a bit later. We're going to create a display of roots and soil at the front, so it almost looks like it's under a tree, which is the design that I saw in the reference photo that I liked. So we use some of the strangler fig roots, some of the faux rocks and tree trunks. We'll put some lights in there as well to make sure people can see them, and then we're going to sink these mulch pieces in for the soil. So the way it works is that we want these below the roots. So we've got one in there, and we'll start moving them down so that you can't see any mulch above the top root, if that makes sense. It'll make more sense as I start to build it, but we'll sink these in and make sure that the roots are visible through them. And you've just got this effect where it looks like a cutaway of the roots underneath the tree, and a few more faux tree branches and roots and stuff like that. That'll look really nice. And then we're going to replace those leaves with this billboard. That's the little jungle scene that we used for the back of the pygmy hippo habitat. We'll just reuse that here. It's got the kind of vibe that we're going for. And then I'm going to find the thinnest wooden pole that I can, which is this one here, and use this to create the long piece of wood that the pupae hang from. So we'll get this into the right position. We'll replace these glass ends with something more solid as well, so it looks more realistic. And we'll get rid of that earlier attempt at a thin pole there. And then we can make a little pupae. So one of the best pieces in Planet Zoo for making things like this is the egg pieces. There's quite a few of them, and this last one here is Flexicolor, and probably the smallest as well. You can see a couple of earlier attempts there, but we're going to use this Flexicolor egg to do it. So we'll make it a bright green, which is what they look like in the photo I was looking at. And then we'll position this underneath the little log that it's hanging from, and then we're going to clone it and copy it below itself so that we can make something that looks less like a tiny egg and more like a pupa. So we will spin this round, and then if we get this in the right position, we can get that sort of jointed effect that they have, and that looks really nice. We'll copy this down the length of this piece of wood here, and then we will clone it and make the other ones brown, so it looks like we've got more than one species of butterfly here. And that's the little pupae display done. You'll see the finished result in the cinematics in a minute. We just need to tidy up the path and start joining the foliage onto the path that the guests are going to walk on, and the habitat's done. The way we're going to do that is to take these faux rocks and get a sort of two-tone grey and green effect on them so they look kind of mossy, and arrange them around one piece of mulch. And if we get that right, then we can just use that one piece to create the entire edge of the path. This is going to meld the path into all this foliage really nicely, and with the mulch at the back, that will tie it in with the plants so you can't see the join. And this also enables us to get away from the straight line that is the default path, because we have to have that straight path running through the middle. That's the way the walkthrough exhibit works. This enables us to make it look like it isn't a straight path and is going around various little bits of interest and the plants, and a more winding natural path that's going to lead the guests through the exhibit, past the butterflies, and down to the exit. And that is our butterfly house done. Let's check it out. I love how it looks, just nestled in amongst the trees there, and with the gravel in front of it, it's got a really impressive look to it as well. Here's the entrance. I should give a shout out to Christina for the gorgeous Art Nouveau font I've used to put the 1895 on the front of the building. And here's the inside. I've got the maximum amount of butterflies in here. We've just got the one walkthrough exhibit. There wasn't space for more, but it looks really good. There's so many of them flying around in here. Once there's more of the zoo to see through the glass as well, it's going to look even better. One of my favourite additions to the game, the butterflies. They just allow you to build something completely different to what you've done before. And speaking of completely different, here is our little pupae display. Really pleased with how that looks. Considering the materials available to us, I think we've done a good job there. Let's check out where the zoo started today. And just to the left of our South America house, here is what it looks like now. Very rare for me to build something just off the top of my head like that, but I'm really pleased with the final result. I hope you guys like it. Thank you for watching as always. Thank you so much to those of you who've joined the Explorers Club. Hit the join button on the channel if you want to see your name up here, and I'll see you again next week for some more Planet Zoo. Bye.